Does playing at altitude matter in Football Manager? So I'm really curious to see whether player condition changes with the altitude of the stadium we're playing in. So I'm really curious to see do these green bars go down to red quicker when playing at altitude? And I do think this question is worth thinking about because you can't actually see the altitude of the stadium you're playing in FM24. So Mendiola FC, for example, play their home games at McKinley Hill Stadium in FM24, and there isn't any information about the altitude of the stadium when looking at the information page. But that being said, you can still play matches at altitude, and altitude is still coded in the game, at least according to the pre-game editor. So what we're going to do today is play a match at sea level and play a match at altitude, and we're going to see if it affects our players' conditions. So to test this, I've created two databases, and we're doing this test with Mendiola FC, which is the team that I am playing with in my personal save. So the first database is a regular database. Mendiola FC are going to be playing their home matches at McKinley Hill Stadium, and McKinley Hill Stadium is located at sea level. However, in the second database, I have changed Mendiola FC's home stadium to be at Estadio Daniel Acides Carrion in Cerro de Pasco, Peru. And the reason I've changed it to this stadium is because this is the highest altitude stadium in the world. Although not in the Football Manager information page, this stadium stands at 4,300 meters or about 14,100 feet, and it is the highest altitude stadium in the world. In fact, it was recently done an article where Always Ready, the team that plays at this stadium, had the record for the highest altitude match in the Copa Libertadores. And there was a ton of interesting things that came out of the game, but notably the other team talking about how tired they were playing there. In fact, at halftime, the match was 1-1, but then Always Ready ended up winning the match 6-1, scoring 5 goals in the second half. And a lot of that was due to them being acclimatized to playing at altitude compared to the team they were playing against. So again, in this database, I have set Mendiola FC's home stadium to the highest altitude stadium in the world, and then we're going to compare this to playing in their actual home stadium, which is at sea level. And in both databases, I have simulated forward to the first home match of the season, and we're going to compare the conditions of each players after the match. But I have done a couple of things here to help standardize this experiment. In both databases, I have set every single player to have a stamina of 10. So in theory, they should all have the same capacity within the match. But the main outcome variable we're going to be looking at is the overall condition of the players. The overall condition is what that green heart is and the tactic screen and when you're playing the match. And as the condition goes down, that heart might go from green to yellow to orange to red. So the maximum condition that we can have is 10,000, and I have set that to be for every single player in game. So the entire starting 11 has a overall physical condition of 10,000, which is why we see these bright green hearts here, and each player has a stamina of 10. And what we're going to do is compare that overall physical condition before and after the match at sea level, then before and after the match at altitude, and we're going to see if there is a relatively significant difference between playing at sea level and playing at altitude. So that being said, I have simmed forward to the first home match of the season. Because it is two different databases, there are going to be different home matches. At sea level, we're going to be playing DHC at home, and at altitude, we're going to be playing ADT at home. But to be honest, both teams are fairly similar. If anything, DHC might be a little bit better, so we might get a little bit more fatigue playing at DHC. So if we end up being more fatigued at altitude, it won't be because the team that we were playing against was any better. I'll also note that because it's Mendiola FC, the squad is a little bit different for both databases. But for the most part, they're very similar squads. The players are very similar quality. So the slightly different players shouldn't really have an effect on the game, but of course I have standardized their stamina and overall conditions in the hope that will help to kind of standardize everything for this experiment. But anyways, let's get into the matches. The first match we are going to play is at sea level. And again, we are playing in McKinley Hill Stadium, which is at 0 meters. This is sea level. This is our first match. I'll see you all there. All right, so this is the first match at sea level. We are going to be looking at the hearts and the condition of each of the players and see how it compares to when they eventually go to altitude. And off of the corner here, we are getting an opportunity, and Mendiola have actually scored, taking a 1-0 lead over DHC. Standard of play here is not brilliant, but that is okay. That is not what we're looking for today. We are looking to see how it affects players' overall fitnesses. When it goes into Hajimati, it is a shot, it is a goal. Justin Figueroa making it a 2-0 lead for Mendiola. What a match. Uzoka playing it in. He finds Murayama at the back post. That is an easy finish as DHC try to get back into this match. So this is how things are looking at halftime. Overall, everyone's condition is still pretty good. There's a few players who have a bit lower condition. Elias Mordal having just kind of good condition here. Neil Villanueva having just kind of good. Steven Ramos just having good. But otherwise, it's still green bars. Everyone is still looking pretty decent at the halftime mark. There's a pen. I was not paying attention. I don't know how the pen happened. But DHC with the opportunity to get back into the match here. Arda Chinkir steps up and he scores, and it is 2-2. I do want to take a quick moment as we go into the last 10 minutes of the match to see how players are doing. As we can see here, we're tiring, but there's a lot of yellows. We're not really seeing the oranges yet as we go into the last 10 minutes, but definitely some players on the opposite team being tired. I mean, we're starting to see a little bit of those oranges, a little bit of those yellows. So this is kind of our baseline at sea level. And could we get a late winner here? It's gone back to Lee. Lee playing it in to Santos. Can we get a late winner? Oh, it'd be amazing if we got a late winner just for the dubs. And I said that we could end up being the late losers. DHC to swing the ball in. Murayama taking a breath. Is he tired or is he just wasting time? But it goes into Chinkir. Nothing yet. But it goes back to Murayama. I'm sure he's going to shoot. He does shoot. He does score. We are, in fact, the late losers. It doesn't help probably that I'm not making subs for this experiment, but DHC now have the lead. So just looking at the players' overall condition after our first match at sea level, they look fine. We have one player in orange, but most players are in yellow. Even up top, Antonio Bayon is still relatively green. So I don't think the players were overly fatigued after that match. But that being said, I'm going to go through, I'm going to write down the numbers. So just as a reminder, I'll click on the player, I'll go to their attribute details, I'll go to their fitness. I'm going to write down this overall physical condition number, and I will compare it between what we see at altitude. But this is what the hearts look like right now. I think the hearts look fine. But again, I'm going to take down the data here. I'm going to put it into an Excel sheet, and then I'll do the comparison with altitude. But that being said, we are now going to play at the highest altitude stadium in the world, and we will see if there are any differences in our overall players' conditions. All right, and this is our altitude test. We are playing at the highest altitude stadium in the world in Peru. Even the pitch looks a little bit different. The pitch looks browner, doesn't it? I remember reading an article saying that they have trouble growing grass on the highest altitude pitch because there's not enough oxygen. And I think that might actually be reflected in game. We are playing ADT instead of DHC. I just went to the first match of the season to try to keep things as consistently as possible. ADT are actually considered to be worse than DHC in the game, although ADT immediately scoring here. It is a 1-0 lead for them. Pinero, that's a goal. Oh no, it's 2-0 to ADT. Casas to play it out wide to Mordal, one of the better players in an early Mendiola side. With the ball in, Espinoza with the goal. We are right back in it. And it's gone out wide to Rodriguez. I think there's a Rodriguez on both teams here. It finds Chung. Chung playing it in. Very poor defending from Mordal. And Javier Gayoso has found the back of the net. Guerrero to put the ball in. He does put the ball in. It falls to Sanchez. That's got to be a shot, and Hajimati scores. We are having some exciting matches. It is 3-2 now. So it is currently halftime, and something I am noticing, the conditions are significantly worse in this game. Way more yellow. I think everyone was green at the last halftime at sea level. Everyone's yellow. We're going from like good. I think everyone was good last time. This time, a lot of the players are just fair. There's a lot more yellow here. So I think, I mean, we're gonna wait till we see the results when we actually look at the numbers. But right now, I think altitude is having effect here. We'll see if it has an effect at the end of the game as well. But Hajimati plays a wonderful ball into Casas. Mordal to stick the ball into the box. And there's the equalizer. It is 3-3. Let's go. What an exciting match at altitude. Mordal getting around the outside here. Mordal with lots of lungs still. He's got energy. Shoots, scores. Mendiola take the lead. Espinoza, it's 4-3. It is the 66th minute. Look at how tired everyone is. I mean, they're wasted. They're absolutely wasted. And look at our players. They're also really tired. And we're approaching the 70th minute. I think there's something to this. I wonder if since we're at home at altitude, the football manager gives us a little bit of a boost, thinking that we've been training there and that we could play there, which is maybe why like we're not as bad as ADT is right now. Like I think we have a little bit like we're pressing well. We're not as fatigued with them. So I wonder if there's a little home field advantage situation happening that football manager is taking into account as we score our fifth goal and we lead 5-3. But both teams are looking seriously tired. ADT looking for one last opportunity, but their players are knackered. We're surprisingly still doing well. Espinoza's in. Espinoza scores. It is 6-3. And immediately looking at our players' conditions after the match at altitude, I don't think in the last match we had any players with orange or red. Everyone was yellow. And we have a ton of players here who have a red condition. I think there was a huge difference. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to go through and look at the data. But already, just visually, the color and kind of the level of the heart, I think there's going to end up being a big difference. But I'm going to go through. I'm going to get all the data here, and let's see what we've got. All right, so I've compiled all the data. I'm going to stick the table with all of that data up here now. But the average condition after the match for the sea level was 7,800, and after altitude, it was 6,918. That is a massive difference. It is very clear. Playing at altitude had a huge effect on the player conditions. And not only that, but we had 5 players who played in the altitude match who had an overall condition of around 6,000 or so, which I think is the point where we get that red line on the heart, that red color on the heart. And we were not even close to that in this sea level match. So this data is conclusive. The effect size is huge. It is very clear. Altitude in Football Manager plays a big role on player condition. And I did not realize how in-depth this match was. I had no idea that altitude had any effect on how players were doing. I'm also curious to see visually what the difference between 7,800 and 6,918 is in game. So we're just going to manipulate this on our goalkeeper here. So we're going to go and edit his attribute details, and let's make it 7,800 and see what that looks like. So 7,800 is not that bad, just kind of a yellow color, but the heart's not too far down. So let's change it now to 6,918. Was that right? Yeah, 6,918. And that is a pretty big difference, actually. That is a different change in color. So we've gone from this kind of yellow color to an orange color, and it is pretty far down. That is a significant visual difference. Well, the results are conclusive. Altitude makes a fairly big difference to players' conditions in Football Manager? So I think this was a really interesting question because high altitude physiology is actually something that I study in uni, or it's part of the program here. We actually have a high altitude physiologist as one of the professors in our department. So that's kind of what made me wonder. I was like, I wonder if altitude is affected in game. The lower levels of oxygen potentially making the players more tired. And it is pretty clear. Playing at the highest stadium in the world led to a really big difference in players' conditions after the match. All right, well, I hope that you have enjoyed this football manager experiment looking at the effects of altitude on player conditions in Football Manager. I hope you all are having a wonderful week, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.